Generally speaking, I think the best way to think about this is that behavioral insights helps government to think about public policy in a more human way. So how do we create public policies that actually communicate and interface with humans in a more natural human way? So if you think about some of the way we, for example, ask people to pay their taxes, it can be quite cold and legalistic and actually sometimes confusing. So as a very general rule, I think it lets us be more human as policymakers. I'm going to give you two examples because they demonstrate different ways to implement this kind of work. One is building on what I just said about being more human. So if you receive a fine for speeding, typically it doesn't make sense. It's just notice of intended prosecution, and it's all quite kind of hard language. Now, for me, that encourages people to be quite defensive. But somewhere in there, we lost the ability to explain why people shouldn't speed. So we test a variant of this letter, and we tell people, actually, the reason we have speeding limits is because there's been a history of accidents in that area, and we don't want you to be involved in another accident. You know, no one means to kill anyone, they were just driving too fast. And what we see is that not only do we see an increase in the number of people paying, but we see a massive reduction, 40%, in the number of people prosecuted for speeding thereafter. Let me give you a slightly different example. This is work by my colleague, Dr. Raj Chande. What he did was he ran a trial with thousands of schools across the country. And these schools texted parents over the course of several weeks. And the text simply said, why don't you talk to your child about his upcoming maths test or what have you? And then they recorded education attainment. But what they find is that these text messages lead to an increase in the performance in maths exams, which is equivalent to an extra month of teaching. And that's just from text messages, which cost, next to nothing. Integration is a complex issue, and there are many different components and junctures at which behavioral insights can make a contribution. What I spoke about in my talk was about how a behavioral insights-led approach had managed to reduce the differential success rates of people from minority backgrounds versus people from white backgrounds at managing to secure a job in the police. But actually, I think behavioral insights has much broader has a broader range of things to offer in this space. For example, I think a behavioral approach might help design policies in a way that enable people from different backgrounds to see the perspective of others. And there is some research, it's very early, so I'm not going to quote it, but we can see actually an increase in social trust, an increase in trust in other groups as a result of these kind of interventions.